Hello, class. Welcome to week 4. Dr. Doug Brown here. Great week in our applications for emergency services research course. As I said in my announcements, you continue to do a great job. Give 110% to all the discussions, written assignments, and preparing for that final assignment. If you've not looked at the literature review that's coming up in the final project, please take time to look at those now. I'd encourage you to start preparing for that final project ASAP. I have found the students that start early, start working on that final project, tend to do much better than if you wait till the final week. It's important to remember on the final research paper and missing assignments, I cannot accept any late assignments that week. So the final research paper, when it's due, it's due. By the deadline, I can't take any late assignments, so make sure that you plan ahead of time. Why not? It's difficult for me to grade the current assignments, grade those final research papers, and then have your grade submitted by the deadline while also preparing for the new term. Sometimes those new terms don't overlap, but just keep in mind I cannot take any late work that final week, not any late work from any of the previous weeks, nor the final research paper. So I apologize in advance, but just make sure that you plan accordingly. Obviously, if there are some extraordinary situations, we may be able to work something out, but make contact with me. I'll see what I can do to help you out. But for now, final week, no late assignments, please. So keep working, keep moving forward. You're doing a great job. Okay, so what I'd ask for you to do, I mentioned this in the announcements before I start talking about week 4 and discussed last week. Please take time to look through the announcements, the tips, and some of those things that we've previously shared, as well as in the Getting Started forum. Look through that information occasionally. I'd encourage you to look through it a couple times per week so that you are on top of the discussions, you develop them correctly, your papers are correct, meet APA, and you keep moving forward on the literature review and preparing for the final. So let's talk a little bit about last week. I'm going to sort of go to the end of the announcement, and then I'm going to work myself back up. So just hang with me here real quickly. Last week, great week, great discussions, 3 papers. This week starts the first time we don't have to write the 3 papers anymore, just have two papers in the discussion. So that'll give you a little bit of a break moving forward. Last week, we explored Chapter 4 in Leedy and Orman and really took a look at the goal of trying to really better understand the research process and identify some of those pieces, something we've done. We built upon, as I mentioned last week in the video, every week sort of builds upon the past week, and that's what we've continued to do. Last week is built upon those first couple of chapters. Our discussions, really focused on planning as part of the research process. We discussed a little bit about the topics and the problem statements, and I'll just keep mentioning those as we go forward because they're important. The problem statement and the purpose statements are very important, and I always mention those because they're difficult. I keep, as I said last week, narrow those topics and those research proposals, those papers or the topics in those statements, because it's difficult. If we get them too broad, you're not going to get the answers that you seek. It's very difficult to conduct the research. You get frustrated, and it just doesn't work out. So I want you to be successful, and that's why I want you to continue to narrow. So, for example, the fly. If we were studying entomology, the fly, our question shouldn't focus on the entire fly. We should, perhaps focus on one area of the fly or something that it does in particular. So that hopefully, if you haven't watched that video, go back and take a look at it. We also discussed the scope of research conducted in fire-related research journals. Those included library, using the the International Fire Service Journal of Leadership and Management, and the EFOP papers as well. If you haven't looked at those, I encourage you to take a look at those real closely. Read them, read those papers. You'll get some information out of each one of those. Some of the things that we discussed in our discussion assignment, the 6 research tools, which include the library and the computer. And I know some of this seems, sort of basic, but it really, it's okay. That's okay to do. Using the library and the computer, you can use that for all research types. Measurements and statistics, that's typically used for quantitative research. And then, of course, our own mind and language can be used for all research types as well. It used to be at the point, as someone mentioned, that, we pick the books up, spend a lot of time in the library, reading journals, etc., making notes. You can still do that if you'd like to do it, but it's so much easier if you use the library, use the databases that we have available, and go in and take a look at those. Google Scholar as well. Just remove the patents. So, again, we can use qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods research, among others. Those are the 3 primary. And then in our case, we're going to use you can use action research as well. All right, week 4. Good week last week, so, well done. Week 4, what are we doing this week? A lot to do this week, except for we have one list paper, which is always good. You could focus on those other 2 papers. So since we have one list paper, those 2 papers you have, I would like to see them near perfect. Layout, organization, APA, and the material. I really want to see that in-depth work. Make sure that you demonstrate some critical thinking in those papers, if you don't mind following the instructions. So what are we doing this week? We're going to read chapters 5 and 6 in our textbook. Chapter 5 is writing the research proposal. That gives us a real good basic idea about that research proposal. And then chapter 6 is descriptive research. So we go back into learning more about that research process and how it's done. And it sort of describes and lays that out in chapter 6 as we move forward. Good PowerPoints for chapters 5 and 6. Make sure you take a look at those, if you don't mind. So again, 2 papers, 2 written assignments this week. After reading chapters 5 and 6 in the text, reflect upon the content, write a 2-page paper. It can be over. I encourage you to go over. If you need to do that, it needs to be double-spaced. Following APA, headers, page numbers, correct title page, etc. Write a paper on what you have learned from the material in reading chapters 5 and 6. And then let's see, paper number 2, submit your proposed research topic. It should be 2 pages, double spaced, and this will be the basis for the research proposal that you will submit in week 8. So make sure you meet that minimum page content. Remember, the title page and the references do not count towards that 2-page requirement. Thus, you should have about 4 pages total. And then our discussion. You will discuss your ideal for a research proposal topic that you will address in your research project. Conduct a research. Your goal must not be to prove a point. So remember, we're not proving a point. We're sort of just finding out what's going on. We're taking a look at what's going on and then reporting on our findings using evidence following APA and text citations and references. Make sure you review the paper example and APA tips before developing your paper. And also take a look at the feedback I've given you in the previous weeks to help you. It's also always important to use that feedback that I've given you. And again, make sure you cite your work following APA. When in doubt, just cite. Check your grammar, include the correct headers, page numbers, and references. Of course, let me know if you have any questions. Let's go back. Some of the things that I mentioned here earlier in the first part of the announcement. It's important that you really develop your research proposals using research that you can actually do yourselves. And that's that basically means researching, if you're doing action research, etc., what you find, building upon what we've done in a class, what you find on those proposals with your own department, etc. The research should be an objective analysis. Again, we're not trying to prove anything. We're just trying to be objective. That's why I say third person writing, no I's and we's and us's and they's. We want it to focus on being objective instead of subjective, so you're removing yourself away from that situation and taking a look at the 40,000 foot view of what you see. No I's, we's, and us's in any of your papers this week. Third person writing only, please. But on that final research paper, again, the 40,000 foot view, so this is what we see. So if you walk out in your yard today and you see ants in the yard, you'll report on what you see, not if you were an ant or if you got down and interacted with the ants, but what you see from that view. So it has to be objective, it has to be balanced as well. And again, unless your work is an action research paper, your paper should focus on analyzing the current phenomenon or issue, such as staffing, problems with ALS ambulances, tiered system, whatever it may be. That's what it should focus on. Again, just to reiterate, we're not trying to prove anything that we need additional, such as we need additional staffing or ALS or whatever. We're simply analyzing what we see or find in our research. We don't really ever prove anything or disprove anything in our research. We just report upon our findings, whether that's in the literature review or based upon our study. Excuse me. Go back to the Getting Started forums. Take a look at the examples and tips that I shared with you, if you don't mind. Discussions, please make sure to reply to more than a minimum number of your peers in order to earn full credit. Please also make sure that the initial post is in depth, concise, easy to follow, on point, and well supported with evidence in the form of citations and references following APA. Go back and look at the example of the discussion board in the announcements. I posted that within the first couple days of the class. We'll take a look at that if you don't mind. Also check your spelling and grammar. A few updates. Most of you know Dr. Jim Corrett, the chair of the department. He shared some information here that's applicable, very important. So take a look at this in the announcements. Also, just real quickly, we don't need a table of contents or abstract in the short papers unless you just want to include them. We do need it on the review of the literature as well as the final proposal. But you don't have to have it in the short papers. I'd encourage you to add it simply because it gives you some good practice. So take a look at that. Look at those examples that we posted. So a lot to do this week, but not as much as we've had in the past. Good weeks, a little bit of a break this week as we move forward. It does start to get less in depth or not as busy as I guess I should say with the papers, with the assignments, but lot more to do as we move forward and get ready to take a look at that final. So make sure you take a look at that. We have 4 weeks left, just a few weeks left before we have to submit that proposal, and I want you to be ready, and then we'll move on to the fall season. Or the fall semester, I should say, fall term. Just make sure you're ready for that. So that's about it. Let's see, I've had you about 15 minutes now. Thanks again for all your work. If you need any help, you're not happy, you don't like feedback that I'm giving you, etc., don't stress. Don't get upset. Just give me a call, send me an email. We'll talk about it. We can meet live using Zoom or Skype, and I'll help you with anything that's going on. So thanks for dropping by. Have a good week. I'll see you in the discussions. Keep rocking. Turn in those messing assignments. Get me whatever you got going on that's messing so I can help you with that. Don't wait till the last week. See you later. Have a good weekend.